Welcome back to Education Matters. Did you correctly answer true? Research has shown that any two individuals, regardless of race, have about the same differences in genetic makeup as two people from different races. We continue our conversation about race today with some special guests from Explorers Middle School in Raleigh and their new friend, Mr. Joe Holt Jr. Sitting in the center, Joe Holt Jr. joins us today. We have two students from Explorers. We have Zack Boone and we have Cohen. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Keith.
We invited you. This seemed like with our first conversation about this new exhibition in Raleigh, it seemed like a great opportunity to tell the story that you've been working on. These students have working on a student project, and we'll have some more information about that in a minute. But it was based on your story, Mr. Holt. Just to give our viewers just a real beginning thumbnail, we're going back to 1956.
That's correct.
Brown versus Board of Education, which may have said that segregated schools were unconstitutional and not allowed in the United States.
Yes.
1956, you were a junior high school student, and the reality wasn't exactly the same here in North Carolina, was it?
No, North Carolina and Raleigh in particular was a very thoroughly segregated city at that time, and the school system was entirely segregated in 1956. 2 years after Brown versus Board. And it's my understanding it remained mostly segregated for perhaps a decade and a half after that.
And so at that point, now your mom and dad, your mom was in the school system. She taught where?
She taught in the Wake County school system at Cary Colored Elementary School.
Which is what they were referred to then.
That's right. That was in Cary, North Carolina.
Right.
That school no longer exists, but that was the name of it at that time.
But so from what I know, your folks knew, or at least understood, particularly your mom being in the school system, that she wanted you to have every opportunity, and she didn't believe that unless you were able to go to, at that point, what were the all-white schools. I mean, you were at that point a rising 8th grader, so you would have been going in, and you were in junior high school, and your parents applied to have you to enter into what was then Daniels Junior High School, now Daniels Middle, and then later Broughton High School.
Right. At the time, I was actually in the 8th grade at the time that we applied for me to go to Daniels. I had been promoted to the 9th grade and was slated to attend the 9th grade. I entered high school at J.W. Lincoln High School, which was on the other side of town. Daniels High School, Josephus Daniels Junior High School, was in my community. I lived on Oberlin Road. Daniels was located within the Oberlin community. So we submitted an application in August '56 for me to attend that school. And this was the beginning of the effort to integrate the schools in Raleigh.
Right. And so, and just to sort of close what happened basically is for 3 years, the school system and the schools denied your admittance because you were black.
Yes, that was the basis for it. They didn't want to say that it was the reason,
right? But
that really was the reason. It was based on race.
All right, this is, Zack, I want to ask you, this project came about, that it was you and Lev, and I should point out there were 12 students involved in this whole project that I know that Mr. Holt has gotten to know. Why did this story need to be told by you?
Well, first off, we started with just learning about civil rights in our 8th grade group, and our teacher Shannon had already known Mr. Holt, so she had him come in and kind of tell us the background about his story, and we could tell by the emotion that he showed that it really meant a lot to him, and we could tell that what he went through really took a toll on him. So we felt that people should know what he went through in order to end segregation in Raleigh's public schools.
So you two students and the group of your students, as part of a service learning project, I understand, decided to do something about it, to try to not only tell the story, but maybe in some way help right a wrong. Is that kind of what you had in mind, Lev?
Yes, we definitely wanted to right a wrong that the Wake County School Board did, and we wanted to make sure that they apologized to Mr. Holt for their wrongs.
And one of the things I mentioned that Mr. Holt's mom was a school leader her whole life, and one of the things that your students have done is you've petitioned the Wake County School Board to name a school in her honor. I think, and you've referred to it as a reparation.
Yes.
Why that? I mean, why choose that path? I mean, you're getting some attention. We're going to try to get the story out through our TV show, but why that path?
Well, we wanted reparations because we wanted Wake County to acknowledge that they did something wrong and to apologize to Mr. Holt. But we also wanted to recognize him through naming a school because that's what his story mattered in, education.
Right.
And that's why we thought it'd be a great idea to try to get a high school or middle school named after him.
Mr. Holt, what do you think about these young folks?
Oh, I'm just very, very proud of them, first of all. I've met with them on 2 or 3 occasions, and each occasion I've been just so impressed with their intelligence. They're highly motivated. They work as a team. Much of this credit needs to go to their teacher, Ms. Shannon Hardy. I've just been very, very impressed and amazed at how they work together, and the fact that they've done this research and understood just what happened, the injustices back at that time, and that they, of their own volition, wanted to try to do something to correct it. I call them modern drum majors for justice. That's what I call them. That's a term taken from Dr. King.
Dr. King said that we all have a role in that line.
Right, but that class, they are young drum majors for justice.
That's fantastic. Zach, it's not lost on me that you're the same age. You're going into high school, Sanderson, next year, that Mr. Holt was going. How does that make you feel?
Well, just to know that Mr. Holt went through the same thing, or went through this tragic event, these tragic events that he went through, I just think that if that was me in his shoes, I don't know how I would deal with it. So I just feel like many people should think about where they would be if it wasn't for the courage that he showed, because many people would be on different life paths if it wasn't for what Mr. Holt did.
Love, it must be a little bit hard in some ways as a young man to kind of fathom that your friends that you go to school with now might not be allowed through the door in 1955.
Yep, it really is hard to just picture, and it seems like, that never happened, but it did.
Right.
And I don't know how I'd deal with it, I don't know. I definitely wouldn't be brave enough to make a stand like Mr. Holt and his family.
Yeah, and I should point out, I think we showed a clip on the screen as they were rotating around. There was a story, Mr. Holt, when this came, it got some press attention back then, also brought some unwanted attention. There it is on the screen now with your family. Some unwanted attention to your family too.
Well, let me give a little bit of background for you about that photo. I think you're talking about the story that came out in the Raleigh Times in November 1956.
Yep.
And I think the headline said, "Negro Dad May Sue." But now that sent quite a few messages. First of all, if you went through the newspapers back at that time in Raleigh, you seldom saw any photos of black people. You wouldn't even know they were in Raleigh unless a crime had been committed. So the message to the community was that this family has crossed the line.
Crossed the line.
And they have committed an offense.
And it resulted in some harassment, and I think ultimately your father ended up losing his job over it. Unfortunately, we have so much we wanted to talk about, Mr. Holt, and but we are out of time today. But I want to thank you for sharing your story with us today. Zach, Love, thank you for what you're doing. I think you're making a difference at a young age, and I appreciate you being here. But thank you three for being here. After the break, this week's Leadership Spotlight.